It's like you got to work 2-3 jobs, and then you have tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. The idea of even one day marrying someone, buying an engagement ring, buying a home, having kids, it is just so crazy to even think about that because everyone's just drowning in debt.
Welcome to Overlap, brought to you by Wave Media. I am Tianchen. I'm happy to be joined by Jackson Hinkle today. Jackson, can you make a brief introduction of yourself?
I'm Jackson Hinkle. I'm very happy to be here. I'm the host of the independent news show, The Dive with Jackson Hinkle in America. Cover foreign policy issues, and it's my first time in China, so happy to be here.
Jackson has like more than 2 million followers on X. And what happened to your YouTube channel?
Yeah. So that was my main platform. YouTube was for like the past 3 years, talking about a lot of issues, but mainly the Russia-Ukraine war when that was going on and the development of BRICS and the multipolar world. And when I recently visited Russia for the first time several months ago, I guess the censorship team at YouTube didn't agree with my views on Russia. I'm very pro-Russia. I was showing people that, the sanctions against Russia really haven't hurt them. They've, in fact, thrived in the face of it. And because of all that stuff, they permanently banned my channel. So it's no longer existent, unfortunately.
So you can't get a second account?
They banned me on YouTube, Twitch, PayPal, Venmo, WhatsApp, and a whole lot of other platforms, because if you challenge like the orthodoxy in the United States, specifically surrounding war and foreign policy, they just have to cancel you because it's too much truth for them.
So only Elon Musk give you a chance?
Yep, only Elon Musk. There's a few smaller platforms, like there's one called Rumble that's an alternative to YouTube, but X, formerly Twitter, is the main one. It's where really like all the most important people in the Western world go to debate ideas. So I'm happy that, he's taken it over and let me stay.
I would say that would be an honor to get canceled by them.
Yeah, it is a bit of a badge of honor.
But it's not in a good way in terms of the influence.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know you are pretty popular in China?
I guess I've kind of learned that since I've been here, but it's been cool to meet so many creators who are famous on like Bilibili or the other platforms, and then they were familiar with me, so that was really cool.
It's because like one of the posts went viral here on Chinese internet because you posted a picture comparing the situation of Xinjiang and the Gaza area. So that won hundreds, thousands of fans for you.
Yeah, it is a really stark contrast when you look at the photos or people vlogging and filming themselves around Xinjiang. And it's so incredible to me that there are various states, various organizations that are funded by the CIA and affiliated groups who are trying to push the narrative that there's something bad going on in Xinjiang. But if you look at the stats, you'd know that Muslims are treated better here than they are in America, for starters. There is nothing bad going on there. It's actually China's trying to, provide some sort of economic invigoration to the people there, and they're succeeding in that. And that's why the West is lying so much about it. They're trying to, stop China from succeeding in building it up and bringing more prosperity to the people. But unfortunately, there's a lot of Americans who still believe that there's something bad going on there.
So when did you guys see this sharp comparison? Is it why you started to promote the MAGA communism? Can you just briefly introduce the idea? Because to be honest, when I first saw these words together, I thought that was a weird, if not crazy idea.
Yeah. MAGA communism, it's really interesting because the Trump campaign was an outsider campaign. He's an outsider figure, but even more so, the Make America Great Again voter base of his movement is really beholden to nobody, even Trump. They will call out Trump if he has bad stances on the Ukraine war or certain issues. And I think that's admirable because that movement at its core is a working class movement. It's like the first time we've had class consciousness reintroduced into the American political debate for the first time in decades. So the whole idea of it started with my friend Haas of the Infrared Show. He went around to Trump rallies and events across America and was talking to average Trump voters. You know, they're portrayed as far right, but when you actually go talk to people on the streets, you know, they're upset with the World Economic Forum. They're upset with BlackRock buying up all of our land in America. They're upset with Big Pharma. They're upset with the permanent war state we live in. They're upset with Wall Street. And at its core, they just want a country that is for Americans, a nation amongst nations that will work with countries like Russia and China to build a better future. And I think that's really beautiful, and it kind of is the essence of communism. It's a country for the people to uplift our standard of living and increase our prosperity. You know, it's like the desires of the people here as well, and something that she has been able to fulfill in large part. So that's where MAGA communism came from, and it's made a lot of waves.
Mm-hmm. Can I interpret it as only communism can save America?
100%, yes. Only communism can save America. That's a perfect way of putting it. The way we usually talk about it is a country that will focus on development, production, manufacturing, rather than a hyper-financialization of our markets. And in the process of doing that, you know, an economy that will actually value and benefit the people of the country at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So let's get to the young people in the States, because we know that a large portion of your fans are young people, and you yourself is also from Generation Z, I guess. Yeah, of course. So how do the young people in the States, how do they view the domestic and international politics? Do they still care about it? And if not, what do they care the most?
I think it's a really interesting time in America because so much of the younger generation, it seems like they almost care more about foreign policy and foreign politics than even our own domestic situation. You know? Yeah, I mean, you look at Twitter right now, or you look at any social media platform, look at the major creators and political influencers. They're all talking about Ukraine or Israel or Gaza or whatever it might be. I do that as well, of course, but my focus is always stop the madness that's ensuing, and let's focus back on American politics. So I think that's where MAGA communism kind of comes in handy, because it's like that's the end goal, but first we have to stop all these pointless wars and sanctions and government interference, coups, regime change operations. But you have to think about it like I'm 24, so my whole life America's been waging wars, whether in like Iraq or Afghanistan, Syria, now Russia and Gaza. So we kind of just grew up with this permanent warfare, permanent war state. And now we're headed towards World War III. So I think a lot of young Americans are concerned about that. They understand that this is where the first problem they really need to address to help build our country back up and fix things here at home and work with other nations in a more peaceful manner. So yeah, I think a lot of Gen Z just have kind of lived this experience, and that's why they're so concerned about everything.
So most of them, like, they care less about like who's in house, if Biden or Trump.
I think they see a lot of the internal politics. It's a different name, but it's the same policies, you know? So you could have 400 people in the Congress.
You can't make a difference. So
yeah. The goal, I guess, is to, through talking about all these various issues, it's to bring about the complete destruction of the current structure of our state as we know it, and usher in something new that will actually prioritize the people's needs.
Mm-hmm. So I know there is a broad distrust of the major institution among the US people, but is there a much lower level of trust among the younger generation towards the mainstream media and also the main institution?
Yeah, Even like the primary issue right now for foreign policy is the war in Israel or Gaza. And older people in America are far more likely to support, whatever Joe Biden is doing on that issue. Younger people, almost in unison, like 85% oppose what Joe Biden is doing in Gaza. So there's far less trust. Younger people are flocking to alternative media sources rather than watching.
Like yours?
Yeah, like mine. And And that's how we're winning, by being able to show people the truth and convince them. But that's just where young people are.
So can you just give some significant events that people start to realize how many lies they are telling? I know you fight with the CNBC and this kind of channels before. And that makes you much more popular among the audience.
The past few years, it's just been crazy. There's a popular influencer in the West right now. His name's Andrew Tate, and he calls what is essentially attacking all of the truth tellers the Matrix. And it really is kind of a Matrix, like from that film with Keanu Reeves, because everything that they've said over the past, 8 years has been just complete and utter lies. Like, you look at the Russiagate collusion hoax with Donald Trump, that ended up being a huge lie. You look at everything that happened with the end of Trump's presidency. They tried to impeach him over, a phone call with Volodymyr Zelensky. That all ended up being a lie. In America, the media has made a mockery of themselves because anyone that doesn't agree with the mass media, they call a racist or a misogynist or a white supremacist or like they have all these names that they just throw out. And they've kind of just made fools of themselves because no one believes it anymore when truth tellers get attacked. Most recently, the biggest issues have been what's gone on with the war in Russia and, starting that war, agitating Russia, breaking previous promises, sanctioning Russia, all that stuff. I was looking at CNN. They still believe at CNN that Ukraine is going to win this war against Russia. It's like they're living in a parallel universe.
I think they start to back off a little bit.
A little bit, but there's still, people.
That was a sign.
It's crazy. It's crazy what's going on. So all those, if you've been politically aware for the past 8 years and you've lived through all of that and you look at it all, you can't help but not trust the media after all that, So
how do they react to you? Like when you went up and to argue with these big guys?
Yeah. They call me names. They call me all sorts of names. I mean, if you look at my Wikipedia page, it's just filled with completely libelous claims about me, saying I'm this, that, and the other, all these crazy smears. But that's usually all they have. I'll go on Piers Morgan or I'll go on Talk with Chris Cuomo or whatever, and they just kind of laugh, but laugh at our ideas and say, oh my gosh, you're pro-Russia, you're pro-China, how could you? You're pro-Palestinian resistance, how could you? But their laughs eventually turn to tears when the rest of the world wakes up and sees that this is the truth, So that's all they can really do, because they can't bait the matter on any sort of fair ground, or else they themselves would look like, lunatics.
Mm-hmm. That was a lot for the background. So let's get back to the MAGA communism. So how do the younger generation view the communism and especially MAGA communism? Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, communism in the West has become synonymous with just cultural liberalism for a lot of people. And it's just so different if you go to Russia or Eastern Europe or China or wherever, it's like anywhere that's not influenced by Western finance capital in a nefarious way. People here understand what communism is all about. It's for the common people, uplifting people. And America, communism for the right and the left has kind of become synonymous with a college-aged person with pink or blue hair, and their pronouns are they, them. It's crazy stuff, promoting a lot of cultural degeneracy and trying to break up the family unit, all these sorts of things. So it's very sad, but I think that one of the beautiful things about this, movement of MAGA communism, and I guess the chief leaders of the movement, like Haas, who I mentioned earlier, is an effort to actually explain to people what communism is. When they hear MAGA communism, they're like, what? And then you explain what it is, and they're like, oh, so communism isn't about this cultural liberalism. It's not about, having pink hair and going to the BLM protests or something like that. It's about something substantive. It's about changing the nature of how our country operates and uplifting the collective prosperity of the people. And I think that's it's been a net positive, because a lot of people have learned, about Stalin, about Mao, about what even the Kim dynasty has been able to achieve in the DPRK. And so I think it's been a net positive.
So how do they perceive China, and in their minds, can China represent communism? And I believe the communism in China definitely different from MAGA communism.
Mm-hmm. I think that when it boils down to it, MAGA communism, communism in America, in the same way that you have communism with Chinese characteristics, and it is distinctly different from Soviet communism, American communism will be communism with American characteristics based on our history, our culture, our people, and the very unique problems that we face, because we are in the belly of the beast with all these issues. And our government is the heart of like all evil. It is this satanic cabal. So we have very unique challenges. Yeah, we have all those unique issues that we have to address in America, and that's why it will be communism with American characteristics. As for how Westerners and Americans, and specifically younger Americans, perceive China, I think that the vast majority of people do perceive China as communist, but there's this weird thing in America where no one wants to admit that communism is successful, right? So when people talk about China and they utter their lies about China, whether it's about the Uyghurs or whether it's about like, you know, they have these crazy lies that they talk about in the mainstream media about like how a social credit system is destroying the fabric of society here, you know. When they talk about anything that they don't like about China, they say China's communist, it's bad, that's why we can't have communism here. But then when they talk about the success of the, you know, Chinese civilization and how incredible, you know, certain parts of it are that they do sometimes admit to in the mainstream press, they say, well, yeah, China's successful, very successful in some capacities, but it's not really communist, you know? So they kind of flip back and forth based on how they want to portray China. Overall, I think that most people in America really don't understand China. They don't understand the culture. They definitely don't understand the very long history of China. They don't have a clear grasp on, and this is something I think I've even reckoned with since I've been here, and I've seen the intense levels of development and hyper-focus on emerging economies that China is truly mastering and succeeding in accomplishing. Like, people don't understand how far China is ahead of the rest of the world regarding all these matters. It's incredible. Like, going to visit all the places that, you know, I've been in my short trip here, even going to Huawei or going to the, you know, exclusive economic zone for free trade where they have Tesla and a bunch of, you know, hydrogen facilities, aircraft facilities, like it is truly incredible. And I think that's something that Americans don't understand is how successful it already is.
Mm-hmm. So here's a big disconnect from the reality and the image like China shows on international. So do you have any like suggestions for that, for the publicity thing?
I guess my suggestions is to just be like proud of the successes that you guys have already had in China. And Americans, when they think about innovation and leading countries, sometimes they think about Dubai, or they think about like UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the big cities that they're building
Israel.
there. Not Israel. But they think about those places where they're just building these massive skyscrapers and stuff, that sort of thing. But the place that I went to yesterday, I think it's called like Lingang or something. It's like
the port.
Yeah, you go there. That blows everything in the UAE out of the water. It is so much more impressive. So I think, you know, it's more difficult because we have natural blockades in place on social media between our two countries. But I think just showing people that, explaining to people that the mainstream media has lied to them about everything in America, so of course they're going to be lying about China. You know, they don't care about you guys, they just want to tear your country apart. I think it's good to remind people that.
There are more and more influencers and like vloggers, and they came to China and they made like short videos of that. Some of them also went viral on the social media platform, I believe. Yeah, if not get blocked.
Everything I've posted, people have been either they know already about it and the incredible nature of it, or they haven't seen it and they're so surprised by it.
Definitely. So let's get back to the US. So recently there has been considerable controversy within the prestigious universities like Harvard due to we all know the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. And I know that the presidents of the universities, they are forced to quit, and there's protest going on campus all the time. So we can see they're kind of like in a dilemma, I would say. Like they cannot ignore everything happened in Gaza, but they can neither like stand with Palestine. So that's that situation representative in the US right now, based on your observation?
Yeah, that's just a small microcosm of everything that's going on with the issue of free speech. That is the most important foundation of our country, is this, supposed free speech we're supposed to have. But like I've mentioned, we don't really have it. You get banned everywhere if you tell the truth about these issues. But the thing about the conflict in Gaza, it is the first time that I think the overwhelming majority of the public has kind of said, what's happening here is bad, and they've met an overwhelming pressure to not say that stuff, to censor themselves, whether it's in corporate entities, whether it's in universities, as you just mentioned, whether it's mainstream media news organizations, or even in politics. Like you're not allowed to talk about this issue in particular, and there's so much censorship around it. Even at those universities, there's been protests for Gaza, and what happens is when the students go out and protest, or they write letters to their administrations about these issues, there will be a concerted effort to make lists of the names of the people who went to these protests and prevent them from getting jobs after they graduate at law firms. But the last thing I'll say about those professors and the one at Harvard is they are very liberal. So there's a lot of liberals that still support Palestine, but they're extremely liberal. And when it comes to all of the issues that have, risen to the forefront of public debate in America over the past 10 or so years, they've always taken the side of these debates that says we must censor anyone who's racist and doesn't support Black Lives Matter. We must censor anyone who is saying that transgenderism is a mental illness. They're pro-censorship on all these issues. They align with the government on all these issues. The one time they speak out about one critical issue against the government narrative, they find themselves kicked out of Harvard University. And I think that's very interesting.
So that was in Harvard, and that was in Columbia and MIT. So does that also representative among the common people?
No.
Really?
No. I mean, the decisions to remove them from their positions?
No, I mean just like kind of they are trying to move from the Israel side and to the Palestinian side.
Yeah. The common people of America, not as much as China, but in America, the overwhelming majority supports Gaza and the Palestinian resistance. But since I've been here, I haven't talked to one person who supports Israel, which is, it was kind of a surprise, but young people in particular truly support Gaza, like 85%, very overwhelming odds. The problem is that a lot of the people in powerful positions who make decisions in America, they are, I guess, Zionists find their power in finance capital, in the ruling class. Not to say that they are all, Israelis or Zionists themselves, but that's where they take their power from. And because of that, you can't really find yourself in a position of power unless you agree with Zionism. Average people support Gaza.
So do you see the education level play a role in how people form their political perspective? I would say like behind the education level is their economic status, because education is so divided in the US.
Yeah, it's kind of education level and economic. It's almost kind of synonymous in America, because if you don't have money, if your family doesn't have money, you're not going to, these colleges are like minimum $20,000 a year. But in most cases, if you're going out of your own state to attend university, it's like $40,000 to $80,000 a year. Those things are kind of synonymous. I didn't go to college, so I feel like almost if I had gone to college, I may have been influenced by all of the liberal imperialist propaganda that they instill in the students at these universities. There's, of course, notable exceptions, but for the most part, all of the professors at these colleges and universities if they were to speak out against the permanent war state, if they were to speak out against what the US government has done in Syria or Russia or is doing to China with regard to the lies about Taiwan and Xinjiang, they would find themselves out of a job very quickly. So there's this, it's truly a liberal bubble in all of the universities all across our nation. And I think that's why you have, I guess, the problems we do and why the MAGA movement is depicted as lower class, uneducated. You know, the class and the lack of education kind of frees them of the propaganda they would have otherwise faced.
Yeah, I can see that. So back to the younger generations, what are the main concerns of the young Americans today? Because we see in China, we have a nascent popular culture called lying flat. So it's basically the young people are promoting that we don't get married, we don't get kids, and we just slack off at work, and we have lower desires, so we don't have to consume a lot. So that's basically they are trying to express their concerns, and they feel the inequalities towards this society.
I guess that's kind of tied to the economic health of your nation. In America, when Trump was in office, there was such a swing culturally in one direction, and everyone was fearful of being labeled racist, anti-gay, anti-trans, all that stuff. Now we're kind of swinging back in the opposite direction. And people are focused on real bread and butter issues. The youth are focusing on our economy, inflation. They are fearful about the fact that America is not tapping into our valuable resources like our oil and stuff because of that. Basic goods are so expensive. They're very fearful about high housing prices and the lack of a basic social welfare state. I was talking to some people here in China about what does it look like for young people in terms of accessibility to healthcare, schooling, housing, when you get older, Social Security once you retire. And they explained it to me, and I was like, wow, that's it's all encompassing. Like, they've got you guys covered for the most part, maybe not housing, but all the other things are pretty covered. In America, we have nothing. We have 80 million people who have no insurance or virtually no insurance. And if you have to go to the hospital, you have to pay tens of thousands of dollars. Housing in cities,
It's getting crazy now.
it's crazy. In the Midwest, it's a little bit more mellow. Social Security is not enough to really sustain life for most people once they retire. And when it comes to education, we just talked about it. It's very expensive, and it's not really educating anyone. It's propagandizing people. So I think that Americans are focused on those issues. I guess the main thing is the youth look at the fact that we spend $900 billion on our military every year. We spend more money than the next 10 largest countries' militaries combined. And we say, gosh, if we could use that money to fix the problems in America, crime, homelessness, and the other ones I just mentioned, we'd have such a beautiful country. But the interests of the ruling class are so far out of step with the interests of the average people.
So we have seen a lot about the classic US middle class life in movies and in TV shows, like how you get a decent, like huge urban house and with dogs and cats and you send your kids to private schools, and so that doesn't hold true anymore. But it used to be true, right?
Yeah. It used to be true. But now, I always describe it, our economy now is like when my grandparents were alive, you could work one job at a factory and you'd have everything you needed and money to go take a vacation once a year. Put your kids through school, you don't have to worry about anything. Now, we live in this Byzantine labyrinth of an economy. It's all speculation, debt, hedging your bets on stock. It's not real. We don't produce anything anymore. So those who are not at the skill level to participate in that section of the economy are delegated to work jobs like driving people around like Uber or delivering food for people, Uber Eats. They'll work those sorts of jobs. Then they got to work a job as a waitress or a chef on top of that. It's like you got to work 2-3 jobs, and then you have tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. The idea of even one day marrying someone, buying an engagement ring, buying a home, having kids, it is just so crazy to even think about that because everyone's just drowning in debt. Healthcare debt, student loan debt, auto loan debt, those who are lucky enough to get a home loan debt. So I think it's really, really bad. But the last part about it is when I said that we're kind of in a cultural swing right now back in the other direction, there is a common sentiment amongst younger people to know that they want to have kids. Like everyone wants to have kids. They want that traditional life. They want to be able to do all this stuff. In America, people want a lot of kids. I think that's kind of a trend that we're probably going to see amongst Generation Z is people, if they can afford it, having a lot of kids, which is good, I think. So we'll see what comes of the economy.
Mm-hmm. So how do they react to this reality? Like they don't, because young people here, they kind of choose to lying flat, and that's their way to say no to the lives they don't want to accept.
It's interesting you say that though, because I have heard that, but when I go out and I see China, all I see is people working, I see development, I see a level of development and production that is unparalleled to the US. So maybe it's because you have so many people here, I don't know.
I think if we compare to like last generation, we are kind of like slack off and we are pretty laid back. But if we compare to other young people in foreign countries, and we are still hardworking.
Yeah. In America, it's kind of just divided amongst our society. You have people who are very liberal, and I guess you have a divide here too, naturally, everyone does, but you have people who are very liberal. They like to do drugs, they like to, just sit at home and goof off, watch TV all day and stuff like that. Very, ineffectual human beings. and then you have the other part of society that is, I guess you could say, consumed with the idea of making money for the sake of making money. This individualistic sort of mindset and approach when it comes to how to navigate the economy and work life. And I think that sort of mindset, better than the first one I described, but it's not as good as what I've seen in China, which is the idea that we can all work together for something bigger than ourselves and uplift, this rising boat, rising tide for everyone. I think that is the Marxist way to be able to say that you don't just make money for the sake of it like we do in America. You make money for a greater cause, and you can increase the living standard of everyone in the process if we all work together.
That's the ultimate goal of communism. So thank you so much, Jackson, and welcome to China. And I'm already looking forward for your next trip here.
Yes. Thank you for having me on.
See you in Xinjiang.
Yeah, I definitely want to go there. Thank you for having me on, and I've had an incredible time here.